At the end of the day, Culture Index is an instrument that measures 7 business traits that's designed to propel the business forward. It does have a practical application in relationships because we're talking about how people interact, right? These are core traits. But it is fundamentally driven towards that organization and helping people enjoy their work better.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Kooler Radio, the broadcast that hosts conversations that can help you craft your life. Each week, we bring on guests who are influencers, coaches, mentors, leaders, and our conversations explore the art of intentional living in crafting life to your dreams. Drop in with us now and get ready to craft your life. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Kooler Radio. I'm your host, Matt Kuehlhorn. Today I'm sitting down with my friend and a trainer for me, Bob Bzarse. He is owner of bzarse Consulting Group and a licensee of the Culture Index as a trainer and consultant. Bob is on a mission to get as many families fed and lives changed. And I'm excited for our conversation, Bob. Thanks so much for joining.
I appreciate your invitation. I look forward to this.
Yeah. Tell us where you are beaming in from right now.
So I am in Kansas City. Culture Index happens to be headquartered here in Kansas City, and that's where I live. And
awesome.
So, although I travel quite a bit, this is home.
Yeah, beautiful. All right, my friend, as always for Kooler Radio, I want to just start out with setting the table, a little bit of context. Where did you grow up?
I grew up between St. Louis and Kansas City, moved back and forth a couple times, which prepared me for later because
awesome.
I moved my wife 9 times in 12 years in my earlier career. So I was one of those aggressive climb the corporate ladder guys.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm in the middle of moving my family right now, and this is the first time since we've had children. And it's a big shift.
Yeah, the children will change it.
So I might have to pepper you with a question. Yeah. Yeah.
Just get used to there's awesome. Always a to-do thing for quite a while.
I believe that. I'm already seeing that. Just prepping the home that we're leaving is a big to-do list. We're going to talk a lot about the Culture Index, Bob. And you mentioned being an aggressive ladder climber in the corporate realm. How did you get into consulting and training with the Culture Index? What were some of the short, concise steps into this?
Well, I had moved up in the big company and got to the point where it wasn't quite satisfying. It didn't fit who I really was. I mean, I did well and provided for the family, but decided to try starting my own business. And I was what I like to call another COVID casualty. That business didn't survive that year. And Culture Index found me. And since I had been a pre-med psych major, I wanted to be a psychiatrist. It lent itself to how I'm, what fascinates me. And now I could bring the career, the learnings with the science and help people and their businesses.
Yeah. I love this. And I want to mention for listeners, the Culture Index is a really incredible tool that has shifted my company and my framework, my self-awareness. I also understand that there's really incredible and powerful intellectual property around the Culture Index. So I want to be sensitive of that as we get into some details here. I know some things are game for conversation and some are more internal. And so I guess just for setting the table, what can you share about the Culture Index as a tool, and why is it such a mover? Like, you're using this to help really change lives, and can you speak into that a little bit?
So what Culture Index does is it's a technical term. It's a psychometric instrument that helps you assess how people are hardwired, and then what roles they fit naturally in. But more importantly, it helps leadership to know what motivates different people differently. What are their communication needs? And if we replace the golden rule with the platinum rule, don't treat others like you like to be treated. treat them the way they like to be treated. And if you don't know who they
Mm.
really are, that's a shot in the dark. So this instrument provides data that starts with self-awareness for people and then leads to far stronger cultures internally.
Yeah. I think that self-awareness piece for me was, and still is, profound.
Most people, it wakes up at least some aspect that they couldn't quite put their finger on. Usually I hear, wow, I can't believe that survey took like less than 10 minutes. And I'd swear you've had a camera in our offices or in my home. And a couple times people have said, you just described something nobody else has. And I thought I was pretty self-aware. And what drives that is it's not so much the behavior. Everybody sees their behavior, but what is underneath? What's the underlying driver of why they tend to react that way? And from there, it's like, oh, well, that's a good thing. Okay, how can I use that good thing to help others and to help my business, right? And so it really is the trifecta of it absolutely will drive a business forward. Top line and bottom line revenues and profits, helps you scale your business. But when it comes to hiring or when it comes to succession planning, it's just so valuable. They're great at what they're doing now. Will they be great at this? Our circumstance or our industry or our business might be just a little different. And so this just helps people get on an even keel of, okay, now that we know who you are, what works for you in this situation?
Yeah. I've asked you this prior, and for the listeners, where do I want to go? There's a couple of things bubbling up, but let me start here. As far as the tool goes and it's assessing personality traits, is there a profile or certain traits that are more valuable than others?
No, there's no such thing as a bad answer or a bad trait. And what we help people understand is the trait is inherent. You developed it somewhere between 5 and 12, and it's pretty locked in. But you can behave differently short term if a need arises in a relationship or in the job, in the role. The question is, how long can you sustain that? And does it fulfill you?
Yeah.
The nature of once you realize that's what it is, how you're hardwired to be, it's much easier to respond to what you need to do in the world and in the workplace. And that's what makes it so valuable. It is, from understanding who I am and who you are, now we have a neutral language. It's not a personal when we have healthy conflict in the workplace.
Right. Yeah, as we've adopted this tool and have it in our communication and vernacular, it's something to play with.
Yeah.
And we can make fun of each other. Like, I run with urgency and not all my folks do. And I really have to slow down my patience when I get into certain settings. And that's the self-awareness piece. And that's the power of it.
And so,
because now I can understand.
Every trait has a very valuable component to it. And we, of course, measure it on a scale of just how obvious is it? How strongly do you express it? How hard is it to modify if you need to? And but there's no such thing as a bad one. The question is, what's the tax of that, right? Because there's to every good revenue that trait's delivering, there's usually a tax, and so it's good to be aware of that. And since you have that, why wouldn't you be accommodating to the folks on the other side of a bell curve who behave quite a bit different, and their superpower is different than yours, but they've got that tax too.
Yeah. I think one of the more valuable things that you've shared with me in our training and over time was the symbol of the triangle, and where there's revenue, there's profit, and there's glue.
Yes.
And maybe it's even a pyramid. There's problem solving, and there's different profiles that can add into different corners. And for an organization, the thing I took away was, wow, okay, I needed at that time to get more folks focused on profit. Like, I needed more detail-oriented people to help me clean up my messes that I'm making and hold on to this profit. And so the revenue, the profit, the glue is pretty powerful. And we do need a little component of all of them.
Right. And some of that gets into that proprietary stuff. But the idea behind it is
Yeah.
If you have the cleanest data in the industry, and Culture Index does, it's just very valuable to align what are your needs. Well, for example, like, so Matt, how'd you get into what you're doing, and what's your why? What's your vision of how you're trying to run your operation and your life?
Yeah, our operation is really focused around this idea of building strength and community.
Okay.
And that comes from years and years of personal development, but also finding experiential education, being in outdoor leadership with youth and adults, and just seeing transformation, seeing eyes shine.
Okay.
And it really fires me up. And so now that Kooler found me 9 years ago, it's been a vehicle for this component of building strength and community. That's a big, big drive.
And so, that's so valuable to just ask people, like, what's their why? We'll get to the what of the job in a second, but how'd you get here? What do you want to do? But
Yeah.
what's driving that? What's that motivation? And that's sort of what drives these cultures in these successful organizations. It's usually, it's been quoted, culture eats strategy for, breakfast and whatnot, but it's because people are aligned to that common vision. And this instrument just helps you get there so much faster.
Yeah. I want to come back to culture, but real quick, the science behind this tool compared to other tools. So some of the other ones like DISC or Enneagram or Myers-Briggs or all these, personality trait assessments out there. Can you speak to the differences or just maybe the accuracy difference?
Yeah,
with the
so
culture
they're
index?
all good. Something is better than nothing. All right. And certain organizations, they may not want to go as deep. They may not want as accurate and as practical an application for what their need is at that time. But, these instruments have evolved over time, and each one gets a little bit better, a little bit more accurate at what they're doing. And so, Myers-Briggs has been around for a long, long time, but it's just not as accurate, the nature of how they go about it. And so you don't want to use it for hiring purposes, because we have what we call a validity score, and theirs isn't high enough for that to be fair to the human being that you're talking to. Ours is 0.91 to 0.93 accurate, so it's within the time frame. You can't beat it. The time frame of how long it took to take the assessment. And so from that perspective, now you're batting 9 out of 10. That's a little better odds than most people use when they're making people decisions.
Definitely. Yeah. So 9 out of 10, super easy to administer, clean data set. Love it. How do you define culture?
So I've heard many definitions, and one of the ones that usually startles people is culture is the worst behavior you tolerate in your organization. That is what's driving your culture. Pretty stark way of thinking about it. But a friendlier way of thinking about it is, how aligned is everybody towards the common goal? Is the common goal clearly defined? Are people reminded of it frequently? Are the decisions based on that's the priority? And is everybody equipped to do that well in their role? And if they are, you've got good, strong culture.
Yeah. I have that focus of the worst behavior that I tolerate written up on my board here to remind myself. For leaders, Bob, how do we capture that worst behavior? Like, some of it, from my perception, is self-awareness. Some of it is observation. And then it's got to have the line drawn in the sand.
Well,
and that's hard to do.
Typically, actually, it's driven from, it's inadvertent, but, people decisions are usually the driving force behind what most leaders are concerned about and what drives most of their challenges and in the end, the growth of their business or the how well it's thriving. What happens is people tend to quit people, right? And so if the manager is inadvertently motivating them the wrong way, they get disengaged. There might be stress, it might be boredom, but they're disengaged. And the more that disengagement occurs, the more something's going to come out that is not the behavior you want in that role in that company. And so by starting with, well, what is ideal for that role? How well is this fit? Okay, well, we love them. They're here. How can we motivate that as best we can, right? It might be a round peg in a square hole, so to speak, but we can at least maximize productivity by appealing to what they're naturally good at. And then, by the way, as soon as possible, you might want to find something else in the organization for that person that does fit them naturally, right? And they do love it. And they get out of bed in the morning and they're fired up. When you have fun, the day goes by fast, right? And when you're doing what comes naturally, it comes less and less work and more, hey, I like doing this.
Yes. Okay, so what I'm hearing in that, Bob, is that it's a leader's opportunity and thus a responsibility to know themselves, to know their people, to know where they're going, and to be able to lead and hold the vision, cast the vision, take everybody down that road. And along the way, through utilizing tools of Culture Index and anything else that is available to a leader, understand where people would literally play, meaning they have some enjoyment best.
Yeah. It's the better a role fits you, the more they're going to love it and the more productive they're going to be. And the less time the manager has to spend with them, and the manager can focus on what they're gifted at and drive the organization forward. At the end of the day, Culture Index is an instrument that measures 7 business traits that's designed to propel the business forward. It does have a practical application in relationships because we're talking about how people interact, right? These are core traits. But it is fundamentally driven towards that organization and helping people enjoy their work better.
For the listeners, I find it super interesting because I had trained with you in Culture Index to understand really how the tool works. And out of that, I had a lot of implementation to do. And some of it was the quote unquote difficult conversation of being honest with folks and helping people find a better fit. And that's tough to do as a leader. However, you can see it in our results, and it is a ladder step up as far as revenue and profitability, and it's made a big dent being one of the more significant pieces in Kooler's trajectory over the last, let's say, 8 months.
Well, and you just said the way you have those conversations. So Kim Scott wrote a book, Radical Candor, and most people, they don't want the, they can pick up on insincerity. They don't want the super aggressive, right? They don't want the, let's all just hug and everything will get better. They want to, in their own particular way, different traits like to hear that message differently. How am I doing? Am I doing well? Am I on track? Have you told me what the definition of good is? And, most people don't get out of bed saying, I can't go wait to have a bad day. And I can't go wait to, get mad at my boss again or get my peers to, join my pity party. It tends to happen frequently.
Yeah.
But they don't want to, right? And so this, just becoming aware, it's such a game changer. I mean, which is why I've said, it actually came up with, as I thought about our owners, Gary and Cecilia Wallstrom, I think about the lives they have changed with this instrument because people are happier at what they do. And so, to me, that's almost primary. But by the way, the businesses like yours, like, I don't know if you're comfortable sharing like as a percent or what, like when those businesses are healthy and they're growing, then they're employing more people. And the more people they're employing are much happier and more content. And almost everybody is not just bringing that paycheck for themselves. They have some family member. It might be a family as in a spouse and children, but it might be nowadays pets. I mean, what people spend on pets is extraordinary, and you need money for that, right? And so whatever it is that they want to use that money for, this is helping them do that, which is why I say, families fed, lives change. That's my why.
Yeah. Yeah, here's a pretty profound stat from April 2023 compared to April 2024. We grew by 197% on revenue.
See, imagine how I feel good about that. Like your business, which what you hired me for. Okay, I would like honest feedback. I'd like to be able to talk to you in a way where it's safe for me as the owner. But the business is growing.
Yeah.
Well, talk to me a little bit about the people. How many people are more content than they used to be?
Almost everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It to me, that's very rewarding. Like I so love what I'm doing here. And I enjoyed my career. And, I grew up in the world of sales. By the way, I wanted to be a doctor originally, right? Didn't take any business courses. So the School of Hard Knocks is how I learned that part of the business. But this is just so much more fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you mentioned a couple of things there. One, it's setting these ripples into motion. And through your training of Matt and Matt implementing this in an organization, there's multiple ripples, right? And that to me goes into building strength and community.
Yeah.
One of my jobs as a leader in our culture is to help my team grow as individuals. Yeah. And that impacts their relationship. That's going to trickle down into their generations.
As far as the community, so stop and think. If I have more energy when I get home because I didn't burn it all at work just surviving the day, now I've got energy for family or community or, hobbies, but I'm as a person, like my personal growth, my personal satisfaction has gone way up. So it's just it's just neat to see the ripple effect of what, just the practical application of clean data, how people tick and what comes naturally to them.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to watch.
Yeah. I wanted to bring up something to make sure folks listening heard you in this, because you had mentioned that different personality traits want to be told things differently.
Yes.
Some version of that. And I think that's really important, because as we have conversations on Kooler Radio around crafting your life, part of it is influence. Part of it is understanding the differences in people to be able to communicate the same message, but for different ears.
Yes. And most people, some people just happen to have that gift, right? Like as in all things, certain people are keenly aware and sensitive to others, and they didn't need somebody like Culture Index and bzarse to wander in their life. But most do.
Yep.
And it's always a journey, right? And the more we think we're pretty self-aware, but then we learn some more and think, whoa, the more I know, the more I didn't know, right? And especially turning it over to the others, right? And now that you mentioned, I have always noticed that I didn't understand that's what drove it. And that is just, well, shoot. First of all, shame on me for being hard on that person in my mind or out loud. But secondly, I can't help but notice when I modify this behavior for the sake of that person, wow, things are going a lot better around here. Like we're getting a lot more done, a lot easier. And now I go home with more energy, right? So it is always interesting to see how people convert into numbers. Results almost always come from people. There's a competitor out there, product or the service is pretty similar. You've probably got an edge somewhere, but frequently it comes down to the people, and the culture drives the people, and those drive the results.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. I've got it written from another coach: people, not the product, drives the profit.
Yep. It tends to. Whoever came up with the really shiny new mousetrap first, they have a small advantage for a little while, but that quick, somebody watches and say, well, shoot, I can imitate that. And now you're back to the people. So.
Yeah. I'm curious, Bob, and draw the line, as we inch anywhere close to IP on this, but you mentioned some people, come in and they've got the spidey sense, if you will, of knowing people, right. and maybe there's some self-awareness, and I can think of a few individuals off top of mind, but is that alluding towards like empathy, logic? Because this is one of the pieces of exploration in this tool.
Well, that conversation is rather in depth, and of course I'm happy to speak with anybody that has an organization they want to go a little deeper, but what I have found is sometimes we have organizations, whether it's profit or nonprofit, small to massive. we can help them all because it's always people driving those results, right? What I have seen is every now and then you run into an amazing leader and they get it, but their team doesn't get it. And that's their oversight. Like, oh, I just sort of assumed these others would sort of have what I have. No, actually, here's what you're getting, and they don't. And kudos to you. Frequently, they learned it at the dinner table. Mom or dad was running an organization, and there was conversation they picked up on it. Usually, it's that. Every now and then, I've seen some uncanny people that it wasn't even that. But they're the rare percentage. And even those people like, man, would you like your team to be as good at this as you? Because the closer they get, the stronger that team will be. And it does come from different areas, Matt. That's the beauty. That's why I will never be bored again.
Yeah.
And I tend to get bored fast. The variables of the human spirit, the psyche, what makes us up. Sometimes what's driving that behavior is from one of these variables and this trait. Other times, no, actually it's coming from this trait, but it looks like that trait, and here's why. And that's why it takes a while to pick up on this, and it takes a practical application, repeat. And the more you use the language, the more fluent you become.
Yeah. I think if there's anything there's so much in this conversation, Bob, but if there's any real point to make for listeners, for leaders, it's get a good tool that helps you understand people, because there's real implications in any of it. For folks that are interested in learning more about the Culture Index, engaging with you, what are some of the next steps? What can they expect?
So what you just mentioned on is important, because there are some things out there where they'll just sort of give you a report, and that's helpful. It's better than nothing. But as we just mentioned, having the coaching and the consultation of, well, in this case, the nuance is here. In that case, you want to consider the following. So the person as well as the instrument is key. As far as if anybody is interested, we give a free hour of consultation for any organization that's interested. We give them the link to the survey. That person, the owner or the leader, and their team takes it, and then I interpret the data for them. If that sounds good and that they have issues I can help with, great. If they don't, or now's not the time, that's fine. But that is our model, is to give that free hour of consultation and interpret the data for them.
Yeah. Is there a certain size of company or sector, industry that you play in most or best, or how would you define any kind of best fit?
We do have a size. Our size is that the majority tends to be, but that's driven more by the challenges that I'll talk to in a second. I was on the phone with a person yesterday. She has 8 people and looking to hire 1 or 2 more. And so you'd think, well, do I want to invest in this? Well, from that perspective, what would 1/15 or 1/10 of your company, if you made the mistake, and most people have made the mistake of kind of go with their gut, and what happened to that person I interviewed 2 months ago? That's not the person sitting in front of me anymore. So the percentage of the gravity of that people decision is higher. However, others, we have Fortune 50 companies using us because we do one thing that no other instrument does, which I won't go into with you here, but that alone, that one component can be valuable for those monster organizations. That said, what tends to happen is an entrepreneur starts in this business, gets to a certain threshold. Getting to that next threshold is a little bit tough, right? And sometimes they've got a couple people and they get there. Well, then there's this other threshold that comes. And so as you heard, the 1 million, the 5 million, the 50 million, the 100 million, there's fundamental thresholds where sooner or later it's like, I could use some coaching on people decisions, and where they bring us in. But we really do vary. We tend to be in that area where there's those key next threshold spots, though.
Yeah. Best way for people that are interested to learn more.
So
you're saying get a hold of you direct.
I would encourage them to reach out to me directly, which is bzarse@cultureindex.com. And then we can start the communication. I don't know if you have a way of just posting my business card. If you go to our website, which has a lot of information, it's fascinating. But if you request it through there, you may not get me because we have people like me across the country. They're all good, so it's not like you have to have me. But if they would like to speak with me, it's easier to reach straight out.
Yeah, we'll definitely include that in our show notes, Bob. And in my last kind of plug here, as far as implementing this tool, it has been absolutely transformational. I mean, I shared with you the number of results, and we're going to keep on trucking because it's now embodied in our language, in our systems, in our recruiting process, all of that stuff, and it's profound. It's really profound.
Well, I appreciate it. It's my honor to serve you and your organization, and I especially love the fact that you have an overarching, vision and why we're doing it. So, thank you for what you're doing for the folks in your market. It's neat to see you help them with their lives.
Yeah, we're playing more than just garage doors. That's for sure.
That's wonderful. Yeah, outstanding.
Yeah. Bob, as we close and as we summarize, any final thoughts, words of advice?
Well, again, something is better than nothing. You don't rely on simply an instrument like CI or its application and coach consultant. It's always a combination of things. And so, keep your eye on more than one, but boy, is it helpful if you know how they're hardwired.
Yeah, it's so powerful. I know that I'm going to continue talking you up, Bob, and this tool. Again, for the listeners, it is absolutely profound and such an easy piece to administer, and you can glean so much out of it. It's spooky.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Yeah. Bob, thank you. Really appreciate you in this conversation, and we'll push it out to the masses, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Outstanding. Thank you, Matt. Have a great day.
You too. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to the Kooler Lifestyle Podcast. We count on your subscriptions, your likes, your shares, and I encourage you to do that now. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe, lower right-hand button. If you're on audio, download this, share it, and we look forward to having you on the next one.